Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the um, third event of this academic year by the Circle for Late Antique and Medieval Studies at Ralph Bunche Institute for International Studies at the Graduate Center. And it is our pleasure, a distinct pleasure, to welcome Professor de la Vaissière to today and to thank him really tremendously for agreeing to be with us and talk about what I am sure will be a magnum opus of Étienne. I mean, another magnum opus, I guess. He just off the uh, oven, so to speak. And Asie Centrale, 300 to 850, the route et the royaume, the royaume, I'm sorry, royaume. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so I just have a few things to say about Étienne, but first 2 minutes of programming note. Um, there are so many of you who we want to invite to this forum. And I wish you would be really give us the time and because we only have 2 sessions per term, it takes a long time to invite people. So there are a lot of you out there that are on our list. So please bear with us while we come and ask you to join us. So I have 2 minutes about Étienne. Étienne doesn't need any introduction whatsoever if you're in the field, but I have two minutes of something. In his review of Étienne's work, Samarkand, Samara, élite d'Asie centrale dans l'Empire Abbasid, Robert Hoyland writes, de la Vaissière has already demonstrated his deep acquaintance with the Central Asian milieu in his path-breaking work on Sogdian traders. Now, in this wide-ranging and thought-provoking study that was about Samara and Samarkand, he has put his knowledge in the service of Islamicists to explain the significance of this milieu for a proper understanding of the emergence of slave soldiers in the Middle East. We might add to Robert's statement that Étienne's book on Histoire des marchands sortiens and now his magnum opus, Asie Centrale, the route et the royaume, fresh out of the oven this month, and I've already, I have it. It looks very nice, and I just need a signature. So he has continued to disentangle various rich layers of Central Asian society, what has given them their distinctive histories, and he has shed light on the history of this important region from the 4th to the 9th century. So for a life's work, which is, is going to continue for another 3 decades, I hope, Étienne has already contributed tremendously to the field. And I'm sure he will continue to do so in years to come. Speaking of Robert's review, Robert says anybody who reads Étienne's work is absolutely essential for them to read my work. Yes, and so if you read Étienne's work, you have to read my work. But anyway, Étienne, a little bit of self-promotion there. Okay, so before further ado, Étienne de la Vaissière is professor at École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris. He's a specialist of the social and economic history of Central Asia, in the early medieval period. He is the author or co-author of several books, including Sogdian Traders, Samarkand, Samara, and he has just published Aziz Central, the Route École, a comprehensive history of Central Asia from the 4th to 9th century. Étienne has been also involved in excavations in Afghanistan and Mongolia. I really can't say more than this about Étienne, because if you don't know Étienne, well, I don't know if you don't know Étienne, but we are very much together with you, very much looking forward to Étienne's talk. And without further ado, I'll give the podium to Professor de la Vaissière. Welcome, Étienne. Thank you for honoring us.
Thanks a lot, Parvane. Thanks a lot for your kind words. Thanks a lot for your kind invitation in this circle for late antique and medieval studies in New York. I'm honored. I will try to explain today an ongoing research on the origin of New Persian, early New Persian. Maybe I should begin by, okay, I should share my screen. Okay, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shameful example of self-promotion because I've put the cover of a new book on the first image. Okay, so let's begin by quoting a final paragraph in the conclusion of an article which was published in Der Islam in 2018 on the Abbasid revolution in Marw. So I quote myself. In Marw, tens of thousands of Arab families should have intermingled with tens of thousands of Persian families, creating, in effect, a social bridge. The birth of the new Persian language is the most obvious and direct consequence of this fluidity. The Abbasid revolution is another one. This idea, which I had 6 years ago, at least, which I already mentioned 6 years ago, is the direct consequence of the new discoveries coming from outside of Iran, outside of the field of Iranian studies, but with consequences within the field of strictly Iranian studies. That is, discoveries from Central Asia, mainly due to the integration of the Chinese sources and of the archaeology of Central Asia into a global corpus of Central Asian sources with the Arabic and Persian and Turkish and so on, Armenian ones. And here I should say that Marw is included in this new...
I'm sorry, somebody's, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Étienne, sorry about that.
Marw is included in these new discoveries and new integration of the corpus, thanks to the work of our Soviet and then Turkmen and Italian colleagues. Moreover, as regards linguistics, the rediscovery of Bactrian by Nicholas Sims-Williams has fundamentally modified the linguistic map, our knowledge of the linguistic map of a region. When you have new pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, especially when you have very few pieces, actually, you have to reorganize all the other ones. And that is exactly what is going on right now. I'm not the only one aware of these new discoveries. Several researchers are working on this topic, and I received yesterday a freshly published article of Rodadad Rezahani exactly on the same topic, which I have tried to read this morning, but it was too late to discuss it really in this lecture. Similarly, I have learned from Kevin van Bladel that it is preparing 2 books on the history of the Middle and then the New Persian language, which will be submitted soon to an editor. This is an exciting convergence of researches, and I'm sure that there will be much to discuss, especially because I should make clear from the beginning, from the start, that I'm not a linguist. I'm not a philologist, but I'm an historian of a society, moreover, of Central Asian society, not of Iran itself. I'm sure that my colleagues will have a much more nuanced and precise mastering of the linguistic data. I will try to show, however, that the analysis of the social and political ones are also of foremost importance. I have put on academia.edu last year a draft of this research, and I have summarized it in this book published 4 weeks ago. But I will try to explain it to you with some improvements. And let's start with the existing dominant theory. The dominant hypothesis on the evolution from Middle Persian to New Persian has been proposed by Gilbert Lazare in a series of articles published between 1971 to 2003. As Persian, New Persian, replaced some Middle Persian vocabulary by Parthian loanwords, he suggested that Persian was the heir of an unwritten northern dialect of Middle Persian on the former geographical area of Parthian. Conversely, according to Lazare, inscriptional Zoroastrian or Manichaean Middle Persian, and also many Judeo-Persian texts, would have represented a different southern dialect, both written and spoken. Actually, Lazare has evolved in his understanding of a phenomenon. And the key point in the evolution of Lazare has been the discovery and publication in Iran in the 80s of the last century of the koinè codes. Indeed, 11th century translation, interlinear translation of the Quran in a dialect very close to Judeo-Persian text and also to Middle Persian. And this closeness demonstrated the existence of a southern dialect of Middle Persian, evolving separately in a regional form of Persian. By contrast, and this contrast is important, Lazare had to suppose the existence in the north of this unwritten, unattested northern dialect of Middle Persian, which in turn evolved in New Persian. But why did it suppose it? Why did it have? Did he have to suppose the existence of this northern dialect? Lazare thought to have discovered a direct historical confirmation of this dialectal approach, north-south, to Middle Persian, in a text attributed to Ibn al-Muqaffa, that is written about in the middle of the 8th century, listing all the languages of Iran seemingly at the end of the Sasanian period. This text has been the key text for all the researches on this topic for the last 50 years. And I've seen that Reza Hani is discussing it also. This text is quoted in 4 sources, the Fihrist of Al-Nadim, and the only one attributing it to Ibn al-Muqaffa, but also the Kitab al-Tambi of Isfahani, the Mujam al-Buldan of Yakut, and the Mafati al-Ulum of Khwarizmi. Here, I have put the translation of the text of the Fihrist according to Dodge, but I have modified the translation of Dodge on the main passage. The key passage is, in Arabic, wa ama al-Daria, falorat mundun al-Madain, wa biya kana yatakalamu man bi bab al-Malik, wa iya mansuba ila adirat al-Bab, wal khalib alayha min lurat al-Khurasan, wal mashrik lurat al-Balk. And the best, the dominant Daria among the languages of the people of Khorasan on this is that of the people of Balk. This text provided a perfect link between New Persian and the northern dialect of the Sasanian past, the Dari, and it would have filled the gap left by the fact that there's no written attestation of this northern dialect. It means that in the south, we would have had the Parsig, abundantly known from Middle Persian texts, the Judeo-Persian texts, and the Quranic Hautes later. And in the north, we would have a separate dialect, not attested once more in writing, but surely existing because it was described by in Al-Mukafa, because of this Dari existing both in the court in Ctesiphon and in the northeast. And it would have been the origin of New Persian in the northeast, the New Persian of the Samanic period. How to explain this geographical discrepancy? We would have in the south a dialect united, and in the north a dialect, but in Iraq, in Madain, and in the northeast. He proposed expanding an idea originally of Arthur Christensen, that the presence of Dari, that is the language of the court in Ctesiphon in the northeast, might be linked with the strong military presence of the Sasanian power on the most dangerous frontier of the empire. It can now be added, thanks to the researches of Parvanet, to this proposal, that the Parthian main noble families played a much greater role among the Sasanian elites than previously contemplated, so that the court, with its mixed Sasanian and Parthian nobility, would indeed have been a very good place to create this dialect based on Middle Persian, but with many Parthian words, afterward disseminated by the army in the northeast. So that from an historical point of view, everything seems fine. Everything seems to nicely fall in places, in good place. In Al-Mukafa could be backed by a coherent historical scenario. However, this is plainly impossible. The text attributed to Ibn al-Mukafa is corrupted because the situation it describes is not possible. The progress of our knowledge of the political and linguistic history of Central Asia invalidates the hypothesis of Lazar. Balkh could not in any way be described as a place of the dominant variant of Proto-Persian exported from Ctesiphon, as Balkh was not in the Sasanian Empire most of the time during the last centuries of the empire. It was controlled from the middle of the 4th century to the middle of the 7th century by dynasties hostile to the Sasanian power, at least from the defeat of Shapur II in 368 in front of a Kushan king reigning on Bactria. Then a dynasty of local or unique background minted coins in Balkh, and then the oasis came under the nomadic Kidarite power. Balkh has been under actual Sasanian control only between 460 and 484, when Peroz was defeated by the Hephthalites, and then it was the Hephthalite capital, and then Balkh came back to the Sasanian between 560 and 591, after the defeat of the Hephthalites and before the conquest of the region by the Turks. It was pillaged during the raids of Bahram Chubin, and it was in ruins during most of the 7th century, a buffer zone between the Turks of Kunduz in the east and the Sasanians in Marw, and the oasis was most probably administered from its Buddhist monasteries. I've written an article on this topic. This is for the political history side of the question. But as regard, it's the same as regard the linguistic side. The discovery of the Bactrian documents, mainly from southeast of Bactria, you can see in Rhodes, for instance, on this map, but also from the west of Bactria, in Gozgan, Juzjan, in northwestern Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we have no documents from Bactria itself, testified to the fact that Bactrian, not Middle Persian, was the official language there. Moreover, there are some forthcoming documents to be published by Nicholas Williams in which we can see high representatives of the Sasanian power in Bactria in the 4th century discussing between themselves, exchanging letters in Bactrian, not in Middle Persian. The official language in Bactria was Bactrian, and the Chinese sources also are saying so. And it's perfectly logical. Up to now, we had very poor documentary proof of that, but now it's very clear. It cannot be denied. So that it is impossible that the Dari of Bactria could have been the best or dominant Dari. Dari was not spoken at Bactria except as a foreign language. Clearly, there is a problem, something that we do not understand in the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa. Lazar wrote that Ibn al-Muqaffa should have described the late Sasanian linguistic situation, so that to save the phrase, the description of Ibn al-Muqaffa, we might try to transpose it to the early Sasanian period and say that it describes the period of direct rule by the Sassanids in Balkh and then the Kushano-Sassanid court there during almost about 1 century. Indeed, in the 3rd and early 4th century, Balkh was controlled more or less by Iran. But contrary to the later period, the early Sassanid court language is quite well known, as it is the language used in the Middle Persian Manichaean text elaborated by Mani and his followers and preserved in the Turfan manuscripts. It is a southern dialect of Fars, and there is a consensus that it cannot be the direct ancestor of early New Persian. So that the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa is impossible for the whole Sasanian period as regards the Dari. But it corresponds perfectly to the 10th century situation. It is exactly what an eyewitness, the geographer Muqaddasi, describing 6 variants of Persian in Samanid Khorasan, wrote in 1984. The language of Balkh is the finest of all. So that I think that we should agree that the phrase, the small part of the phrase on Dari, on the depiction on Dari in Ibn al-Muqaffa, is a gloss inserted in the text during its transmission, and most probably in the 10th century. It describes not the Dari of the Sasanian times, but added a comment in the text on 10th century Dari, that is the court language of the Samanid dynasty in Khorasan, because of the similarity of the name. Dari it's only the language of a court, so it can be the Sassanid court, or it can be the Samanid court, or even the court of Al-Mamun, as we will see. It was certainly inserted in the text before the death of Hamza Isfahani in 970. Ibn al-Nadim was not quoting directly the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa, but an intermediary text, and it is clear from the awkward structure of the phrase that the original part of the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa stopped at the etymological explanation of the name Dari. Actually, Lazar was aware, at least at the beginning, of these difficulties. And in his earliest articles, he floated the possibility of a later gloss. But with the discovery of the Quranic codes, it was too tempting to propose these symmetrical north-south 2 dialects. I will not discuss today the Pahlavi archives from Qom and Tabaristan. We would really need a full and complete edition of them from Dieter Weber, as planned in the Corpus Inscriptionum Iranicum. Let's just say that as far as I could see, not being a linguist, these texts, all of them, are in standard Middle Persian. In these documents, wine is consistently Middle Persian may, not Persian mul. Bird is Middle Persian murv, not Persian murg. The ezafe can be used as a relative clause. the object marker O is present, and so on and so on. This is standard Middle Southern Persian. I should, however, point out that for at least some of them, at the very end of some of these documents, of these archives, at the very end of the 7th or the beginning of the 8th century, in a very daily life setting of the economy of a noble domain, it's really low-level documents. I mean, bring me, buy some wines here, deal with this problem, and so on. It is quite surprising. If a strong scribal tradition could have protected its language and tradition under the political protection of the Sasanian administration, it is more surprising to see it continuing for such menial tasks and for so long, several generations after the Islamic conquest, in a context in which conversion, mosque, Arabs are already present in this text. Or maybe this tradition went on because it simply reflected the actual spoken language, and because there was no such discrepancy between a written and an oral language in Sasanian Iran. That is, the standard language of a Sasanian and post-Sasanian society was simply Middle Persian, as reflected by the text. But I will not elaborate further on this point. We really need more documents on some linguists working with these ideas in mind on this text. We do have also in Khorasan small inscription on ostraka in Middle Persian, and with no traces at all of this Northern dialect. So maybe the easiest solution without the text of Ibn al-Mukaffa is that this Northern dialect never existed. It is an historiographical ghost. It is possible now, with the new sources, to present a very different local hypothesis. Bo Utas, in a series of articles on this topic, has expressed mild doubts on Lazar's reasoning and repeatedly called for historical circumstances which would explain the characteristic of New Persian and the chronology of its development. He proposed as a cautious hypothesis that it was at the beginning a commercial koinè, or a creole, taking the place left by Sogdian. However, there is no reason to regard Sogdian as a commercial lingua franca in Khorasan, as opposed to Transoxiana, as opposed to Maverana. And the only data we have show the Sasanians fighting against any social commercial encroachment there. I have seen that Reza Hani is following this line, but I disagree. Please believe a specialist of the Sogdian traders. There is no reason at all to make Sogdian the lingua franca of trade within the Sasanian Khorasan. It happens by chance that the earliest text in early New Persian that we have, which have been kept, are the two Dandan-Wilik letters from Chinese Xinjiang. And these letters are commercial from Jewish traders with a strong influence of Sogdian. But they are very specific. The Jewish traders following here the Sogdians in their control of the trade of Khotan in Xinjiang. They are far to the east, and they do not reflect at all what was going on in Iran. Actually, in early New Persian, we have very few traces of Sogdian influence, very few Sogdian words as listed by Henning and a list modified by the recent work of Pavel Lourier. If New Persian derived from a language of trade, then the languages of the main traders should have had much more influence on its formation. Such is not the case at all. Early New Persian should have started from a different milieu. To understand its starting point, if there's anything like a starting point, we should try first to be somehow more precise on its characteristic, especially as regard its vocabulary. I should say frankly that I had hopes that the study of the vocabulary of early New Persian, especially a sociolinguistic analysis of the characteristic Parthian strata, might have given some results. Unfortunately, we still only have Lens' pioneering study of a Parthian vocabulary in the Shahnameh, written almost 1 century ago. By the way, if any of you have a brilliant student, please feel free to propose a PhD topic as a PhD topic. This same kind of study, but not on Shahnameh. The Lens has done that 1 century ago, but on the translation of Tabari by Ballamy. Now we have good editions of Ballamy. We didn't have for a long time. Now there is good edition. So if you have a good students, good in linguistics and good in manuscripts, please, I think it would be really worth studying that topic, the Parthian components in Ballamy's translation of Tabari. It would be much useful. Lens demonstrated that there were 220 words of northern origin, which is wider than Parthian, in the Shahnameh. And the focus of the historiography, and rightly so, up to now has been on the mere existence of these words, as this is the key element to demonstrate that early New Persian was formed in the north, as Parthian was foreign to the south. And I think this is true, especially as according to Ludwig Paul, among the strata of the Parthian loanwords in Middle Persian and Middle Persian and Persian, the last one after the end, the last strata after the end of the Sasanian Empire was the most numerous. In Lens' list, for instance, the words for oven, for cycle, for yoke, seem to have been import from Parthian into the Persian vocabulary, as they are not known under this form in the Western texts. Early New Persian was indeed formed outside of a region in which Southern Middle Persian dominated. This part of Lazard's reasoning is perfectly correct. But as far as I know, it has escaped attention that this number of Parthian words is also extremely small for a language formed in the north. Okay, you have 220 words of Parthian origin in the Shahnameh, but there are 8,000 words in the Shahnameh. That is, the Parthian vocabulary is only 2.7% of the vocabulary. This is extremely limited. It means that New Persian could have formed only in regions in which regions submitted to a very, very strong, even overwhelming process of Middle Persianization. This excludes not only the south, in which there is no Parthian, but also the northwest of Iran and central part of Iran, where Parthian dialects were still dominant at the end of the Sasanian period, according to the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa. If New Persian has formed in this region, we would expect much more Parthian vocabulary, especially with the Parthian nobility still holding a large part of power. Persian does not seem to have included any grammatical influence from Parthian either, reinforcing the idea that Parthian was relegated to the margin in the region where early New Persian has formed. But nonetheless, Parthian was still alive with these 200 and so new words. Many of them belongs to the very elevated, noble vocabulary of chivalry and this kind of things. Okay, maybe they came from Parthian epic and the Gosan and this kind of things. But also many of them were of very daily life, peasant life. I've quoted yoke, the yoke, and so on, cycle, and so on. A third important point is that the grammar of early New Persian is a simplified, in many respects, a simplified of the Middle Persian one, especially as regards the verbal system. This was not a refined and elevated form of Middle Persian, but a koinè, as Boutaz has repeatedly written. A last point is that New Persian does not include in any significant number new Aramaic loanwords, which means that this simple language was certainly not formed among the inhabitants of Ctesiphon, surrounded as it was by a sea of Aramaic-speaking peasants, but also of Aramaic-speaking elites, as already noted by Utas. It is impossible that early New Persian was formed in Ctesiphon. We should have much more Aramaic word there. So, if we synthesize these data, it means that early New Persian was formed first in a northern region because of the Parthian loanwords, but not as an export from the capital elites or ordinary people, because it's not complex and there's no new Aramaic loanwords. Second, a region where Middle Persian was the normal language of daily life, that is not based on Persian, that is not from central Iran or northwestern Iran. And third, but where on a residual basis, and maybe in some socially peripheral segments of the population, maybe peasants naming cycles, oven, or yoke in Parthian, Parthian was still a living language. There's a sizable number of new Parthian loanwords. So it was Khorasan, indeed. It's the only region of Iran when you can combine all this data. But what is Khorasan, actually? It's an administrative division. What is its unity? While Middle Persian was gradually imposed all over Iran during the Sassanid period locally, in each oasis or main agricultural basin of the northeast, the Middle Persian-speaking nobles, administrators, soldiers had to deal with local populations speaking varieties of Parthian-like dialects. And they created, each of these contacts created many locally spoken koinè, simplified forms of Middle Persian, integrating some Parthian vocabulary in each oasis. There were several local koinè, one in each oasis. We should not forget the compartmented nature of the geography of Khorasan. These oases were linked by roads, but still separated by deserts and mountains. It's not at all the situation in the Sawad, for instance, in Iraq. So that depending of local circumstances and depending of the influx of speakers of Middle Persian during the 4 centuries of the Sassanid Empire, the equilibrium of loans between both language, Parthian and Middle Persian, should have varied from oasis to oasis. Northeastern Iran should certainly not be regarded as homogeneous in this regard. And the original part of the text of Ibn al-Muqaffa demonstrates that in a gigantic region from the northwest to central Iran, from Ray to Azerbaijan, this influx of Middle Persian speaker was not enough to replace Parthian as the language of oral daily life. Thus, we should search for a region of the northeast where centuries of migrants from the south has overwhelmed enough the Parthian-speaking population so that to impose its one language as the main but non-exclusive communication tool. We are searching, in other words, for a region with an intense colonization from the south is attested. This specific koinè was in turn enriched with some Arabic words after the Muslim conquest. But actually there were much less Arabic words in the Persian of the Shahnameh or in Balami than in later Persian of the 11th or 12th century. I'm coming now to my main hypothesis. The northeastern frontier was, with the Byzantine frontier, the main military frontier of Sasanian Iran. The Sassanids invested very heavily for its protection, while the construction of new towns for reasons of political prestige was distributed all over the empire. The northeastern oases were more specifically military protected and manned. This part of Christensen's and Lazar's analysis, the idea that the transfer of soldiers and administrators from the south played a central role in the partial Middle Persianization of Khorasan still stands. There was an inner and an outer Khorasan, as demonstrated by Parvaneh, with very different profiles as regards the Sassanid presence. Inner Khorasan might have been, that is, Tus, Nishapur, and so on, might have been, up to the end of the Sasanian Empire, still fully Parthian-speaking under its Parthian princes. We simply do not know. Conversely, the northern line of control in front of the nomads, in front of Khwarezm, in front of Bactria, the Turks, the Sogdian, was the focus of the empire, with numerous military settlements and defenses. Balkh, most of the time outside of the empire, benefited from the construction of a gigantic oasis wall when it was in it in the 3rd century. I have provided the C14 dates. It is all the more true in Gorgan and in Marw. In Gorgan, outside, actually outside of Khorasan, but nearby and in the same strategic position, extensive and fruitful excavation have demonstrated that the wall protecting from the encroachments of the nomadic groups the south of the region and farther away the Caspian Gates has been built between 430 and 530, probably before or under Péroz. It has been calculated that along the Gorgan wall, the numerous fortresses could have sheltered up to 30,000 soldiers. However, the developments in Gorgan, extremely impressive as they were, and the excavation is extremely impressive, is also quite late, lasting at most 150 years before the decay of the defense line in the early 7th century. The Sasanian investment in Marw was much more lasting. Marw was by far the biggest oasis in Khorasan. If the tribute paid by the oasis to the Arab conquerors is regarded as a very approximative proxy for its wealth and population, then Marw paid 2.2 million dirhams, while Gorgan paid only 300,000 dirhams, and Nishapur and Herat 1,000 each. Marw could feed about 500,000 of inhabitants, as I demonstrated in my 2018 article. Contrary to Balkh, it was controlled during 4 centuries by the Sassanians, except for 2 short periods, the minority of Shapur II in the early 4th, and the Heftalites' conquest during 1 generation after the defeat of Péroz in 484. It was the focus of an enormous military effort, and was manned with multiple transfers of troops coming from the Iranian plateau. We don't have Sassanian texts explaining this transfer of troops, but for instance, in the Armenian text describing the transfer of troops within the Sasanian Empire, it is extremely clear. In Sebeos, for instance, we still have Armenian troops arriving in Merv in the early 7th century. This is coherent with a shift in languages. Moreover, quite often the court was there, not in Ctesiphon, and the oasis were named the royal residence on its coinage. The excavation, the recent excavation in Iran are discovering a lot of new big fortresses, but it should be clear that most of them were artificial creation for a few years, abandoned and ruined immediately after the departure of the troops. But in Marw, the Soviet excavations and surveys have demonstrated that the numerous small fortified towns of the oasis in the Muslim period were initially Parthian and then Sassanian fortresses and castles. The Sassanians developed the initial effort of the Parthians, and they created an enormous wall surrounding the oasis. Here you have an archaeological map of the oasis, which I owe to my Italian colleagues. There was a sharp increase of the number of settlements in the Sassanian period, and then a continuity in settlements. The troop stayed. This investment of the army was huge, and as demonstrated by the wall, maybe of the 5th century, And this has even left traces in the Zoroastrian literature, in which Marw is described as a strong and active military place, abounding in cavalrymen and a place of circulation of the army. It might be true also for the much smaller oasis along the Kopetdag, but we don't have data, and they were very small actually. If we are to search for an initially Parthian-speaking part of the empire, overwhelmed by an afflux of Middle Persian speakers, Marw should be the place where was developed a koinè mixing a largely predominant Middle Persian with some limited Parthians. We know that Parthian was the language of the oasis up to the 3rd century, as demonstrated by the Manichaean text on church history, and we have Ostraka in Parthian up to the beginning of the 5th century. It is regarded dead. It is generally regarded as dead, as a written language of daily use during the 5th century. But some Manichaean texts are ambiguous for the 6th century. We have safely dated Ostraka in Middle Persian beginning in the 6th century. The interval is too short between these last Parthian Ostraka and the 8th century for a full obliteration of Parthian as a spoken language. Sorry. For a full obliteration of Parthian as a spoken language. To compare it with the Zoroastrian Valley, with Sogdian, we know that Sogdian was no longer in use in the towns in the 10th century, but Sogdian peasants were still speaking Sogdian in the 16th century, 7th century later. So the 3rd or 4th century between the last Ostraka in Parthian and the birth of a new Persian language, it's too short a period of time to say that Parthian has disappeared in between. It can be supposed that in Marw, various sociolects were mixing to various degrees the Parthian substrate of the remnants of the local population and the dominant Middle Persian of the soldiers, administrators, and elites of the Sasanian Empire. This almost unidirectional bilingualism is the logical consequence of the demography and of the different statuses of this community. But there's not only Parthian, as I've told you, in early New Persian, there's Arabic also. 9% of the vocabulary of the Shahnameh is Arabic. In Marw, the Arab-speaking population was extremely important during the Umayyad period, at least 1/3 of the population. I've demonstrated that thanks to the Chinese and archaeological data. These Arabs originated from Arab Turks, 50,000 soldiers and plus their families sent from Iraq in 671 and later reinforcement and settled mostly in Marw. The key point, really the key point, for the birth of New Persian and also for the Abbasid revolution is that the Arabs were not in this oasis a small elite of warriors cut from an ocean of locals, Iranian speakers. The Chinese source and the archaeology demonstrated that the oasis could at most feed 500,000 of inhabitants, and the number of Arab troops and families settled there implies that the Arabs might have been a majority in the oasis or close to it. Once this is demonstrated, the social landscape to be considered is entirely different. This could not be an apartheid society. The Arabs were spread all over the oasis in the villages, as made clear by the Arab texts themselves, living and working there with the Persians during 4 generations. There are 4 generations between the arrival of the Arabs, the massive transfer of population, and the Abbasid revolution. It was a unique phenomenon, with no parallel at all in any region of Iran, Gorgan included. After a massive centuries-long influx of Middle Persian speakers, Marw was the only oasis in Iran with such a huge presence of Arabic speakers. I demonstrated in my 2018 article that the Abbasid army was made of an elite of many Arabic commandants with thousands of Marw Iranian peasants under their orders coming from all the villages where they lived during 4 generations mixed with their Arab neighbors. There are plenty of evidence in the text dealing with the armies of Abu Muslim that one of their communication language was Persian, between brackets, whatever Tabari is putting under this name, Vaissière. We see generals and soldiers alike speaking in Persian. Abu Muslim is joking in Persian, always brackets. The order that killed the fleeing Caliph Marwan in Egypt was given in Persian. These local troops, many from peasants and villages background, could only have spoken the local koinè of Marw, by very far the most important oasis of the north. Balkh did not provide any troops to the revolutionaries and was actually pro-Umayyad, it seems. The social and political fate of these Persian-speaking soldiers was tremendous. During 6 generations, their descendants, the sons of people of Khorasan, Amna al-Khorasan, would control the Abbasid Empire through various political confederations. Their control was total and direct during the first 3 generations. Prosopographical studies have demonstrated that they control most of the governorships, but also official positions of all ranks. I want just to give you one example of these families. There are many of them, but one example. Malik ben al-Haytham al-Khuzai was one of the first partisans of the Abbasids in Khorasan and one of the 12 leaders of the revolution in Marw. He was an Arab from the Az family. He fought in Iraq and became a governor of Mosul. One of his sons was the head of a shurta, then governor of 6th-9th, governor of Khorasan. Another one was later head of a shurta, governor of Khorasan, then of Mosul, then of Tabaristan. A grandson was governor of Ray, and then of Egypt, and then one of Damascus. A great-grandson was governor of Waissière. It's a great family whose power was interwoven in the fabric of the Abbasid power. Their language is supposed to be Arabic, obviously. Except that Malik, the head of the family, the creator of its power, during the victorious campaign against Marwan, was giving orders and discussing with the other Khorasani in Persian. Crucially, and this is very interesting, when his son died just in front of him, he spoke to his dying son in Persian, not in Arabic. Persian was his preferred communication and familiar language. This peek into the linguistic side of the family life is isolated, but it is extremely suggestive of the general bilingualism of the Abbasid political elites coming from Marwi families, that is, most of them. A turning point later was the victory of Al-Mamun against Al-Amin in 813. Like Marwan, Al-Amin was killed in Persian by troops, the Chakar, coming from Khorasan. After this victory, only a part of this group of Abna, the part which has sided with Al-Mamun in Khorasan in Marw, would fully preserve its power. Tahir, the general of Al-Mamun, was a descendant from this very group, as were many of the main political players during Al-Mamun's caliphate and during the 9th century. While the influence of this group was steadily declining in Iraq, Al-Mutasim would rely on troops from Transoxiana. This group was in full control of Khorasan with the Tahiris during most of the 9th century. In another rare peek into Persian life, Tahir muttered his last words in Persian on his deathbed. So that, in Marw, the local koinè had all the characteristics of a possible ancestor of New Persian, that is, a heavily Middle Persianized oasis with still some Parthian-speaking peasants, and with on top of that a very, very massive Arabic presence. These are the components of early New Persian. I can see no other place in Iran with such a combination, and with, furthermore, the political possibility to impose it globally. This was this language which was in use in the Abbasid army. That we see them speaking Persian at the most important episode of their life, that is family, death, victory, means that below the overwhelming and official Arabic, this specific koinè of Marw was turned into a military language and then into a social way to stand out of a crowd. A koinè mixing a dominant Middle Persian with some Parthian and quite a lot of Arabic became the tool of social distinction among the Abbasid elites. If you were an Adna, a descendant of the revolutionaries, you have part into the glory of the Abbasid and you mastered this specific dialect. A linguist has written that a language is a dialect with an army and a flag. It is exactly that. And the flag was black. I owe to Kennedy a perfect parallel. Early New Persian was an Urdu, a language of the Ordo, the military Mongol, or here, Abbasid camp. There is no question that the composition of early New Persian has already strongly evolved in the 9th century, when the first texts in this new language are mentioned. Being a new elite, the Abna had to coexist and exchange with all elites, former Sasanian families and Arab nobles. But their control of the government was so absolute and total that they were the one in a dominant position. So we can only suppose, because we have no text, still no text, that the original koinè of the mid-8th century evolved during the next century, incorporating words and concepts from other local koinè and maybe other Iranian languages. And there is no question in my mind that the victory and the continuous growth afterwards of a range of action of this Abbasid army multiplied the possibility of loanwords from various geographical and social settings, in turn diffused by the movements and cantonments of the army and its elites. For instance, the power of the Tyrid family was in Herat and then Nishapur, not in Marw. So that there is no reason to suppose that only Marw provided to the formation of early New Persian, only that it was the koinè of Marw, that the koinè of Marw was its main central component. The contact with upper-level Arabic and Middle Persian poetry and prose should have taken place during this period among these nouveau riche elites. And the first poem in Persian written down seems to have been said for the arrival of Al-Mamun in Marw, but we do not have any detail on this process. The language of the army became more complex, turning into a Creole as it spread along these geographical and social lines as a token of distinction, meaning participation in the revolution and having a share of its power. The question, and my final question, is why did it take so long to be put into writing? We know that we do have to wait for the reign of a marginal warlord, Yaqub the Safarid, in the 60s of the 9th century, to have mentioned of a court support for a written form of Persian. Specific political context seems to have precluded the emergence of Persian in an official form. First, and obviously, the major obstacle was the role of Arabic and the Arab past in the legitimacy of the Abbasid dynasty. The empire, diverse as it was, could only be administered in Arabic in the framework of an Arab legitimacy, to which the Persian-speaking army was only a tool, if a dominant and powerful one. This explains most of the delay. However, in the semi-autonomous principality of the Tyrid taking shape in Khorasan in the 20s of the 9th century, it is conceivable that Persian might have emerged as a written language earlier. And actually, we do have mention of Tyrid poets writing in Persian, Anzala of Badghis, for instance. But a more precise understanding of the Tyrid policy shows that this dynasty has kept up to its end a dual political footing. They were both the governors of Khorasan and in Baghdad, the heads of the shurta and governors, an extremely important and powerful position in Iraq. In other words, they have to stick to Arabic and could not implement a creative cultural policy, as they still regarded themselves as full members, second in power to the caliphs only in Iraq as well as in the empire of the Abbasid community dominated by Arabic. And their pro-Arabic cultural policy is well known. But as soon as a policy external to this Abbasid system of legitimation, and extremely hostile to it actually, managed to carve a large part of eastern Iran for itself with the Safavids, it immediately implemented a linguistic revolution and made use of this dominant Creole, which was ready to use and to expand. To be immediately to be put into writing at the court of Yaqub, the new army and edit Creole based on the dialect of Marw had to already be in power as a spoken language and had evolved during 1 century. In short, I conclude, I propose that early New Persian was the language of the early Abbasid army, an evolved form of the specific koinè of Marw in the first half of the 8th century. With the northern dialect seemingly an historiographical ghost, a more local hypothesis has to be favored, and the historical and vocabulary data perfectly fit what is known of the situation in Marw. Marw was the only northern Parthian-speaking region of Iran, twice very heavily manned from the south by soldiers speaking Middle Persian and then by soldiers speaking Arabic. It was also the origin of the Abbasid power, and its army speaking its koinè were twice victorious in 749 and 811. The heirs of the soldiers of this army, the Abbasid soldiers and administrators, were in a perfect position to unify the various Iranian koinè of Iran around their own. Thanks a lot for your attention. I cannot hear you.
Thank you. I was thanking you. Thank you so much, Étienne, for this fascinating and very thought-provoking.
I cannot hear you.
Pardon, I can't hear you.
Oh,
yeah, it's okay.
I'm so sorry. Okay. So here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. It was really fascinating, Étienne. Thank you very much for the work that you have put into this, and for really interesting questions that you raise as with this theory. I have tons of questions myself, or but there are already questions from the audience, so I will, if you don't mind, you can also monitor the questions. But here is a question from Annie Honarchian. I have two questions. Have you studied accounts about first generation of people?
That means that they will try to find the amicable release.
I'm sorry, who's talking?
It's okay. I'm muting any noise, don't worry.
Okay. So the question is, have you studied accounts about first generation of people whose language was not Arabic? People whose language was not Arabic learned Arabic? What was their language before they before they agreed to learn Arabic, if not a variety of Persian? Michael Cooperson, UCLA, has worked on this topic. Okay, where are we? Has worked on this topic and given presentations. Also, have you thought why Armenian didn't switch to Arabic or New Persian, being a military frontier of both caliphates? Yeah. Did I
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not at all a specialist of Caucasus, so as regards the Armenian, I don't know the characteristic of the opposition. It was a mountainous country with a specific religion, and so there might have been some factors which were not at play in Marw at all, actually, which was the Zoroastrian mainly. And in plain. So as regard the Armenian, I don't simply I don't know. I could not understand the first question actually.
The third question was about Armenia.
No, the first and second maybe.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Where are we? Okay. Where was it? Yes, okay. The first question was, have you studied accounts about first generation of people and how, and those whose language was not Arabic, how did they learn Arabic? What was their language before?
We don't know, as far as I know, we don't have, for my period, I mean, for my period, that is up to the 9th century, middle of the 9th century, I don't have any text. I think that maybe the Afshin, that is the main general of Al-Mutasim, say very, he was very unhappy to have to learn Arabic and to drink olive oil. He says something like that, but I'm not aware of any direct text. But once more, I'm not a linguist, so there might be some text of which I'm not aware simply.
So, Étienne, the next question is from Kevin Van Bladel. Hello, Kevin. I give a flag, white flag, and you will be invited to this series as well. Kevin,
yeah, I can see the message.
Okay.
Oh, Kevin, please, you are a much better linguist and philologist than I am, so don't ask me theoretical on a question on koinè or Creole. I would simply use this in a very lax and not precise way. By Creole, I simply mean a more evoluted and more complex form of language, mixing various sources. While by koinè, I mean simply a very degraded, low-level form of communication of communication language. But I do not mean to be precise. Maybe I should not have used the term koinè actually, but it's used by Utas everywhere, and by Ludic Paul also, I think. So I thought it was convenient to designate the language of the whole oasis by opposition of the language of the over different oasis. I know that these are terms of contention in their fields, but once more, you know much better than myself on that. I would be very happy to read as soon as it is published to read and to read your book. I'm sure that you will be more precise, and you might have text which I've not seen actually. So once more, it's an approach from especially of Central Asia, of social economy, social and economic history. So I'm on the limits of my field actually.
Okay. So we go to Simon Pierre Étienne, and is many thanks for this impressive work. I would have a question among many. When Ibn Mughaffa says Pahlavi, does he mean Parthian language because he distinguishes it from Farsi of Fars, and he includes as Parthian?
Actually, Mughaffa, Ibn al-Mughaffa is saying he means the Parthian language, And actually, in the whole of central Iran, I've learned that I'm not a specialist once more, but in the whole of central northern Iran, there are many dialects with much more Parthian characteristics. So it seems that during the 5th century, the 5th century of its existence, the central part of northern Iran up to Azerbaijan was heavily Parthianized as regards languages. So yes, it is Parthian. And actually, Lazar is discussing that a lot in his first articles. Before focusing on Dari, he discussed that. Yeah.
So just to tag on that, Étienne, what do you think about the Pahlaviyat?
I don't know.
Okay.
I prefer to say that I don't know. Once more.
No, okay, and because that is also a very, very interesting.
Yeah, I know
question.
that it's a very interesting question.
Extremely interesting.
I've been in touch actually with many linguists for writing this article. Nicolas Simsuyams, Durkin Meisterens, Agnès Korn, Ludwig Paul, Boutas, many of them answered. And Florian Schwartz also I had a very interesting discussion with Florian. And one of them, I think it's Ludwig Paul, told me about the Falaviat, as it is as a really important topic. But honestly, I don't know.
Okay, I will go to Arezou before coming back to you, Étienne. So Arezou, hi Arezou, thank you for being here. You will be in our list as well. Thank you, Étienne. I find your hypothesis interesting and quite well argued. One point perhaps I would ask you to consider, which may change your answer, about why was New Persian written so late, is that it was actually written early, not in Arabic script, Hebrew and Syriac script. Early New Persian was written in the 8th century. Important to differentiate between language and script.
Yeah, but actually, the earliest safely dated text, as far as I know, are the Dadanwilik, 2 letters of Dadanwilik in Judeo-Persian, so in Hebrew script, obviously. But before that, we have nothing, as far as I know, because I do not. I think that the famous inscription, what's the name? I cannot remember right now. The famous inscription, which has been ascribed to the 8th century by Henning, the Tange Safedak, I think, inscriptions which have been ascribed by Henning in central Afghanistan between Ghor and Bamiyan, are not dated. I mean, I've asked several colleagues, specialists of datation system in the Jewish medieval world. They told me that the hypothesis of Henning is false, is simply false. They are not dated, so that the earliest texts we have are early 9th century, not 8th century, as far as I know. So maybe in the Turfan corpus, we might have some. I'm not aware of any document in the Turfan Middle Persian or Persian corpus safely dated to the 8th century. So as far as I know, we are still with the Dadanwilik.
Okay,
that's true. Maybe, sorry, if I may just.
Sure.
Sorry. No, just to say, we might not have many, but when you read them, the language is perfectly developed. So even if they're not many, it still shows that the language was already written down in a very developed way. And then there are the Syriac ones, which I haven't worked with, but others might in this call might be able to talk about.
So Khodadad wants to ask, hi Khodadad, wants to ask also a question in person. Let me read Khodadad Scott's question, and then we'll give the podium to you. So Étienne, you see Scott's question. I've long been struck by continued appearance of Marw's mint name in Middle Persian script on the first few years of post-reform Umayyad coins minted there. It seems unique in the post-reform coinage, which use Arabic exclusively. And I wonder whether the persistence of the use of Marw's Middle Persian name had any significance, or of this way simply a glitch, or was it simply a glitch in the promulgation of the post-reform coinage?
In one word, I don't know, but there are many strange things going on in Marw as regards the economy, including the coinage, as you demonstrated, but also the taxes and so on. And I was wondering if the treaties signed by the Arabs for the conquest of Marw might have been. We have part, at least, of the text of the treatise. It might have been maybe more limiting for the Arabs than elsewhere, because Marw was an extremely big part which surrendered with actually an alliance with the Arabs against the Sasanian pretenders in the east. So maybe it's only an hypothesis. This specificity of the coinage might be part of this more global specificity of Marw, more further east, in regions between Bactria and Marw, which were already conquered, actually. They are still minting coins, but these are not dirhams, with bilingual or trilingual inscriptions in Bactrian and Arabic, and sometimes Middle Persian. So these are frontier regions. So maybe the treaties there were limiting the power of the Arabic administration. Maybe.
So Khodadad, you can open the mic and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Étienne, for the very thought-provoking proposal. I find the Marw proposal quite interesting, although I'm never sure. Marw seems to sometimes be a bit of a gravy train that everything sort of it gets loaded on. But I wanted to make two comments and ask you a quick question. One of the comments is that, first of all, on the Pahlavi thing, I think the work of Pejman Firuzbakhsh, who recently finished his PhD with Ludwig Paul, is quite important, and he's actually he has worked on Pahlaviyat. He now has a project on Pahlaviyat. I dispute the idea of Parthianization of the region that Ibn Mughaffar, and I don't think Ibn Mughaffar, really Ibn Nadim, as I mentioned in the article, refers to as Pahlav. I don't think that's really Parthianization. But I think Pejman's work would make that really clear. And I think generally in this sort of work, it's a good idea to pay attention to work of Iranian scholars who have written in Persian. So we actually have some of the proposals that you originally brought up were brought up by people like Houshang Sadeghi and Azartash Azarnoush and other Iranian scholars who have really pointed this out, including the idea of the learning of Arabic by people who had Arabic was like they were just getting exposed to it. Examples are interesting of this. For example, what we have in Tarikh Bukhara, when Qutayba takes over Bukhara and encourages people to do their prayers, and they can't do it in any other language, so they allows them to do it in Persian, while they still have to be commanded on it in Sogdian. So I think some of the works of Iranian scholars in this field can be really useful, and I've used them in my article as well. My question specifically is that on the coins of the Nezak, of all the Eastern vowels on the coins of the Nizak, actually Middle Persian is used. And that's quite interesting because of the date of the Nizak to the 5th century, which means that Middle Persian, whether as an administrative language of the Sasanians or not, had already made it that far east to make it a viable language. What do you think about the origins of that and the idea that that early on, there is some sort of a military connection, a military confrontation, not as far north as Marw, but rather south in the Sistan Zabulistan area?
As regard, thanks a lot for your questions. As regard Nizak, we should not forget that he was a lord in Badghis, that is just north of Herat, on the very frontier of the former Sasanian Empire.
But
So,
that is that is the Nizak Tarkhan, not the people whose coins are issuing. At least if we believe Vandrovich, those people are actually in Zabulistan and Kabul. They are not in Badghis.
okay. Okay, so
Thank you,
I was thinking that you were
Thank
mentioning
you.
the Nizak Tarkhan, actually. Yeah, the Nizak king of Zabulistan. But I mean, it's quite normal. We have much more plenty. There's a difference between north of Hindu Kush and south of Hindu Kush. Actually, the Sasanian presence south of the Hindu Kush was much longer than north of it. We know that from the coinage on the longue durée, from the beginning with the Hunnic invasion of the 4th century. We know that the Sasanian came back, lost, came back, and so on. While in Balkh, they were not there. So in the south, more presence of the Sasanian influence, and especially the Sasanian language, the Middle Persian, is quite expected, actually. It is in the north that is different, and it's and Ibn al-Mukafa is quoting Balkh, not Albu. So I agree with you, but it is a result of far superior presence. If you have a look at the chronology of the work documents, as put forward, as explained by Nicholas Sims-Williams, especially the presence or absence of, in the datation system of Middle Persian month names, we can see that from time to time, the month name, the Sasanian month name came back into the calendar of Rob, just north of Bamiyan, and then disappeared, came back again. It's not at all the same in the north, but in south of the Hindu Kush, yes.
Okay. Étienne, there are more questions. One is, Yvonne is Yvonne Siegel. Hi, Yvonne. Is two comments. Using the Shahnameh as a benchmark for the percent of Arabic seems pointless. The language was of Shahnameh. The language of Shahnameh was self-consciously Iranizing. Second, your analysis is a blow to the idea that the survival of Persian was a form of Iranians' resistance against the Arab invaders. This is not a criticism, just an observation.
Yeah, I agree as regards the Shahnameh. That's why I've tried to advertise for a PhD student working on the translation of Tabari by Bellamy. I totally agree, but I can only work with what I have. Once more, I'm not a linguist, so I'm reading the articles of the reading of linguists and their books and so on, but we do not have a good study of the vocabulary of Bellamy. As far as I know, maybe there is, but as far as I know, I've tried to find, and I could not find anything. So I totally agree. Still, even if it was Iranizing, as you wrote, still there was 9%. By contrast, only 2.7% of Parthian words. So still, I think that in a global balance of the languages, it means something. I'm not saying that this precise percentage means something, but the global balance between Middle Persian vocabulary, Parthian vocabulary, and Arabic vocabulary means something. Yeah, but the survival of Persian as a form of Iranian resistance against the Arab invaders, we all know here that it is it's a retro projection of ideas which were only, I mean, all the discussion about the Shubia controversy on these kind of things. It's retro projection of ideas which are more contemporary than attested in the sources of this period. For instance, I will give you an example. The Afshin, which I've mentioned, the general of Al-Mutasim, who was a prince of Ustrushana, of mixed Turkish and Iranian descent. He was accused to conspire with Vaissière, a prince on the Caspian, to recreate the kingdom of the Persian. But as far as we can see from Tabari and from the sources describing this conspiracy, it was a conspiracy of the nobles. And what they want to recreate is the Dirkania, the power of the Dirkan. So it was the solidarity was social. It was not linguistic, in this example at least.
So Étienne, Amir Askari would like you to please provide the publication for the Oasis Wall of Marw. You can, if you have it handy, you can put it up now, Étienne, if you have it handy. Otherwise,
I have actually you can find
on your academia
map. In my academia, in my article in the Islam, it is on academia, and the reference actually is the archaeological map of Margiana, published by Kochelenko, Bader, and Kochelenko, Bader, and there's a third author. It's in English, published by the Italians, and there's an article on the wall of Margiana in the north, the various walls of Margiana, and I've been there. I've been on this wall, but now this wall is used as a local road far to the north. But as you know, it was spring, and the sheep was there, and with the sheep were enormous dogs. So we could not go outside of a car to take some C14 prelevement. So I've been there once, but for the time being, we do not have any precise datation. It is dated only by ceramics discovered close to the wall that it is supposed to be of Sasanian. But I'm confident that it is a Sasanian wall, actually.
Étienne, Andreas, Professor Andreas Caploni, hello Andreas, has a question also. We could put it the other way round, he says. Why was New Persian actually finally written in Arabic script? I'm sorry, Andreas. If I follow your steps, possibly to write in this koinè, but keeping visually the high prestige of Arabic?
Yes, that's entirely possible. And I thank you for this remark, with which I agree. But I should say, with all respect to Middle Persian writers, that the Middle Persian script is an invention of Ahriman. But only Dieter Weber is the only person in the world almost being able to read it. See, it's extremely difficult. I mean, we have the same sign representing several letters actually. So it's really awful to read. So maybe also it might be a question of prestige. It can be that Arabic was visually seen as a prestige representation of the language, but also maybe that simply Middle Persian script was never really a good tool of transcribing, and because it's so confusing.
Yeah, just add one little remark, Étienne. So I mean, if we look from the point of the consumers, so to speak, the big majority of people obviously were not able to read, but they saw the Arabic characters, so everything was fine. This was Arabic. They were not able to distinguish, to know which language in this was written. So Arabic script seemed everything fine, the language of rule, right? So those
Maybe,
who
yeah.
were able to read it, they understood that this was another language. But for the big majority, everything was fine.
Possible, yeah.
Depends, yes.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you so much for that. I'm trying to just keep everything okay. Arzu says that Dandanyuluk is all Persian, is all Persian actually. It's New Persian. Khodadat says thank you. Ivan says thank you. It was very well said. Yusuf Saadat, hello Yusuf, says Dr. Firuz Bakhsh has recently published a new book on Pahlavi and showed that it was a literary language in Fahla and Azerbaijan, but it was not the language of Azerbaijan, which was Azari. So then I have questions for you, Sylvan. That's an interesting anecdote with the dogs. Amir Askali says, thanks. If it's on your academia video, I'll find it. Oh, Stephen Humphreys. Hello, Stephen. Hi, where are you? I cannot see you. Okay. It was customary to use the writing system of one's religious community, since New Persian was predominantly a language of Muslims of whatever sort. One would expect Arabic script. Comment. And Andreas says, thank you so much for your most inspiring and convincing presentation. And Étienne, I just have a few comments for you myself. I was just recently looking at Samak-i Ayyar, the Persian novel of Samak-i Ayyar, which introduces itself as having been written in the Parthian period, and then it was, this is a folk story. This is a popular story. I believe that it is the sort of part of it shows the cosmogony of Mithraism, but that is besides the point. In it, it says that this was translated by the person that you usually know as its author. It was translated into Persian. So that's one thing. So I wonder what you think about that. Then, secondly, I don't know whether you've read my articles on the Pahlav and Parthians and the production of the Shahnameh.
No, I've not read it.
Please
Sorry.
read it. Please read it. No, it's okay. Please read it, Étienne, because I talk about the role of the Parthians in gathering and in promoting the Shahnameh. And as you well know, right, in the 10th century, when Ferdowsi was writing down, wanted to write down, especially the story about Bijan and Manijeh, which we know is a Parthian story. This is being told to him, narrated to him, right? In what is most probably, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's actually written in it, from Parthian, right? So she would say something in, she would recite Bijan and Manijeh in Parthian, and he would turn it into into New Persian when writing the poem of it. So I wonder what you think about that. And then the third matter is that Alison Vaca has written on Bactria of Balkh as a Parthian city. I don't know if you have you seen it?
Sorry, Balkh as a
Parthian city.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that is also very interesting. I haven't gotten to read it yet, but I'm sure that it will feed into this into this very fascinating conversation that that you have brought up, Étienne. And I think we are do a sequel with Kevin, perhaps, and Qadadad with you, or no, and Arezou with you. Qadadad will fit in also. Okay, so
I'm not sure that Balkh has been a Parthian city ever, actually, because the Kushan, the Yuezh and the Kushan Empire then developed during most of the Parthian period of power, and before that, the Greeks were there. So we don't know exactly. There might have been a short period between the final defeat of the Greeks north in the Hindu Kush and the rise of the nomads arriving from the north, from the steppe at the end of the 2nd century BC. There might have been a short period during which Balkh might have been Parthian, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I would rather think that that Balkh was never Parthian, actually.
mhm, mhm. So I don't know whether I've missed any questions or not, but if anybody has a question, Professor Schwartz, you have a question?
Oh, thank you. Let me unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much, Étienne. I don't know if you mentioned the fact that we have in Pahlavi script famously two documents that are very much Parthian in their nature, and I think that is relevant that you have actually some literary part.
We have Roman documents, no?
I'm sorry?
These documents, these are the ones.
These are literary texts that one is the I don't know, suddenly I'm forgetting something. Ayaron, is it? Surely someone knows these two texts. I mean, they're in many compilations of Pahlavi literature written in Pahlavi script. One is the dialogue between the goat and the palm tree, and the other is a quasi-epic fragment. Yes, of course. Sorry, I woke up a little too early to remember. So I think that is relevant for the question of the influence of Parthian that we do have through Pahlavi, as it were, a Parthianized literary texts. With regard to the Sogdian content of Sogdian loanwords in New Persian, of course, some of the words that were identified by Henning as of Sogdian origin, New Persian words of Sogdian loanwords in New Persian, some of them, and this was something that Pavel Luria set me thinking about, are likely to be Bactrian. So that should also be taken into consideration. I mean, words like mol, for example, and different words with le, where Sogdian has the, I think one should think of them as, one should examine the possibility of Bactrian origin. So we should maybe temper our thinking about Sogdian loanwords with some Bactrian loanwords. I think the document, Étienne, that you were referring to, sorry, the inscription that
Tanguy Azao.
Tanguy Azao. And so what is your point about the Tanguy Azao inscriptions?
My point is that Henning, if you remember his article, has to go to great length to try to explain the form of what he thought was a date. And he arrived in a very tentative way to a date, but I've shown his article to specialists of datations in the Jewish world, and they told me that no, it's not a date. It cannot be a date. It cannot be a Jewish date of a medieval Jewish date. And as you know, one of the arguments to say that Tanguy Azao was very archaic, so it was based on the date of Henning, middle of the 8th century, but many of the words and the forms adduced by Shaul Shaked to say that it is archaizing, it cannot be late. Actually, now that we have the documents from the Afghan Genizah, which are much later, which are 11th or 12th century, we can see these words were still in use during the Ghurid period. So for me, the Tanguy Azao inscription is most probably a proto-Ghurid or Ghurid inscription of the 10th or 11th, 12th century, something like that. But we have no reason at all now to date it to the 8th century.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One more point I think it's worth asking. In Marw, do we have a linguistic substrate, as it were, of the old language of Marw? I know that's very hard to say because we know really, well, I don't know. I don't think we know anything about that, but it's surely the question has occurred to you. But
yeah, because before the Arabic strata and before the Middle Persian strata and before the Parthian strata, there was a language in Marw. These are invaders. All of them are invaders, actually. But yes, I'm not aware of anything on that. And it's the same in each oasis, actually, but I don't know. And I think nobody knows, actually. We don't have any data. What we would need is to find some new Aramaic or documents like the one published by Shaked, with maybe some words, the local words in them, but we don't know.
Thank you very much.
Andreas also thanks you. Professor Capelloni thanks you for most inspiring talk and convincing talk. Karen Pinto, my good colleague, Dr. Karen Pinto, I don't know where she is. She wants to see the map.
Yeah, okay, I will put the map again.
Yes.
This one? The fourth one? This one?
The next, oh yes, this one, before the wall. Sorry, I'm not putting my picture. I'm very sick with a bad flu and I look like death warmed up, but yes, this one, it was the one before so you are just trying to show the location of the wall in this?
No, the wall, for the wall, it was this one.
Yeah, but the one before, so can you go back? What are you trying to show in this?
It's just a vague representation of the limits of the Sasanian power to the north. That's not a wall, certainly not. There was a wall in Gorgan, on a wall to the north of the oasis of Marw, and in Marw also there were more walls also north of Ḥabīwad and here in this region. But I was not trying at all to say that it is a wall. It is only actually it is my book. This map is from my new book, so it was a way to represent the limits of the influence of the Sasanian Empire, the outer limits. And as regard your second question, actually, it was only a parallel between Urdu and I was trying to demonstrate in this talk that early New Persian was formed in the camp of the Abbasid army, that it was the common language of the Persian-speaking peasants of Marw with their Arabic commanders, which means this is a language of a camp. And Kennedy from the SOAS told me that there's a perfect parallel for this kind of formation. It is the Urdu, which means the language of a camp in India. Ordo is the military camp of the Mongols. So it was only a parallel for the role of the military for the formation of new languages.
So I should say that yes, you know, I'm asking because when I was studying Persian, I was very struck by some of the parallels in vocabulary and the way in which Urdu froze earlier meanings. So, for instance, I don't know if you all probably know this. It's the word ganja, for instance, parvaneh, right?
Yeah.
In Persian, it means treasure, right?
Say it again, my love. I was writing something to say it again, Karen.
The word ganja.
Yeah.
It means treasure in Persian,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So in Urdu, it means bald.
It means what?
Bald. It means bald. You have no hair.
Oh.
So, but it's very interesting because it seems to be frozen in the earlier meaning of the word. So somehow it evolved in modern Persian to treasure, which of course should please all men without hair. Do you see what I mean? That it evolved from the word went from baldness to treasure.
Martin Schwartz has something to say, I think.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you know, Ganj for treasure, it's a very, very old word. We have it in Sogdian as Ghazan and, you know, Parthian and so forth. It means treasure all the way back. However, as a person who myself am Kachal or Ganges, you would say, I like the idea that being bald is
a treasure
of sorts. I've never regarded it as such. I haven't regarded it as poverty particularly either, but I'm glad to know it's Ganjeb. But I don't know what the origin of this Ganjeb as bald is. It's, I don't know if it's Indic, maybe. I don't think so. It's curious. It might be some kind of curious colloquialism, but euphemism. I don't know. But Ganj, treasure, that word goes back all the way, Median period and so forth.
Yes, it's fascinating. I've been wondering it for a long time. There's some other words as well, but that one fascinated me the most. Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting talk.
Thank you, Karen. Pedram Parvini is raising his hand. Pedram.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Parvan, and thank you, Étienne, for the talks. I learned a lot. As a Persian, I have a question, and it's puzzled me for since I was a child and was like going to high school. And it's that when you will look at the modern Persian vocabulary, if you take out the Arabic words somehow came to this language out, the language is kind of useless. We cannot communicate without the Arabic words we have in our language. And the vocabulary word is almost 60%, if I'm not wrong. What do you take on this? What do you think why we have so many Arabic words in this language, while, as we know, and you mentioning it, at the beginning of the conquest of Arab, the language that was used for the government, at least, to collect the tax, all of those documents were in Pahlavi. So what causes that later on, the language we get so much influenced by Arabic? Was it the truth, or that the Arab rulers forced Persian to change their language and not speak language? These things that we are hearing, is that any validity on that? Or was the thing you mentioned before, Arabic was like, Arabic text was easier or has more prestige, or combination of them? Thank you so much.
I do think that that's mainly a question of prestige, actually. Arabic was the language of religion. It was the language of science. And the process of Arabization was very gradual, actually. Most of the words, the Arabic words, once more, I'm not a linguist, so I'm sure that in this audience there are much more persons which might discuss this much more thoroughly. But most of the vocabulary entered, the Arabic vocabulary entered Persian in the 11th and 12th century, as far as I know. So not during this my period. That's why I know so little things, so few things, but also not in a period of power of Arabic-speaking dynasties. I mean, the caliphs in Baghdad were reduced to largely ceremonial role, so you cannot argue that it was a forced adoption of Arabic vocabulary. It should have been prestige. It should have been the necessity also to trade with Iraq, with Syria, Egypt, and so on. The religion, the science, but most probably not political.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to drop my hand up. Thanks so much.
Sure. Professor Golden, hi, Peter. Many thanks, Étienne, for a wonderful presentation. So this was fantastic, Étienne. Thank you so much for coming to us and accepting our invitation. And thanks to everybody for joining us and staying with us for this past 2 hours. We have another splendid panel featuring Professor Dr. Michael Bates and other colleagues. We'll have a numismatic panel coming up. And I would like you, everybody, if you will, please, to open your microphones and thank Étienne for the splendid 2 hours that we have had with him. Thank you, Étienne. Thank you.
Thank you, Parvaneh, for giving us all this time to participate.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Parvaneh, for organizing everything.
Thank you for.
Merci.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Merci,
Thank you
Étienne.
for an excellent series, Parvaneh. Clan has become it's a really top-notch series. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Malek. Malek John, thank you so much for being with us, and as well as Meryl, who's not with us but is kind of watching us, and it is wonderful to see all your faces. Thank you very much, Étienne. Thank you. If there is nothing else, I bid you goodbye. And
Bye.
I know we don't want to go, but we have to go.
Parvaneh, when is the next one?
It's April 5th.
What's the topic?
Numismatics of the 7th century, Islamic numismatics of the 7th century.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Bye.
very bye bye. Have a very nice day. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye bye.